I'm joined now by Green Party leader Elizabeth May by phone. I want to start off by quoting something you wrote on your blog this morning. You wrote, "Did the Prime Minister ask his Chief of Staff to write the check? Frankly, I can see no other reason why a smart person like Nigel Wright would do something so obviously wrong unless he was directed to do so by the Prime Minister." End quote. Elizabeth May, do you think he was directed by the Prime Minister?
Well, Christine, what I wrote on my blog was a series of questions. I think the questions need to be answered, and it certainly is, an intuitive sense of why would somebody. I mean, there's nobody who knows Nigel Wright who has ever suggested the man was a fool. There's no one who's ever known Nigel Wright, and I certainly don't know him, who suggested he's anything other than whip smart and savvy about the world. Well, you don't write a $90,000 check. I mean, who can write a $90,000 check? I mean, I know it sort of gobsmacks people right off the bat to imagine that someone just has that wealth, that they can do a $90,000 check and think nothing of it. And then to write a $90,000 check for a senator to cover for money he shouldn't have taken from the Canadian people. Obviously, anyone with any sense would know that was the wrong thing to do. So it leaves you wondering, why on earth would Nigel Wright have done it? And unlike Charlie Angus's questions, they're good questions as well. I think that one of the questions that needs to be asked is, did the Prime Minister, Mr. Wright, did the Prime Minister ask you to do that as a favor to help sort out the whole Mike Duffy housing expense mess? It's a question. It's not an accusation, but I think it's a question that needs to be asked.
Yeah, but Elizabeth May, help me understand this. You say Nigel Wright is a smart person. The Prime Minister is a smart guy himself. Why would he ask Wright to cut a check for Duffy?
Well, I don't know. I think that there are a lot of questions being asked about what kind of. I mean, we have several senators now who have been several in the Conservative caucus who have questionable expenses in their Senate accounts. But only Mike Duffy has gotten somebody else to pay for money he took that he shouldn't have taken, whether he knowingly made these mistakes in his expense claims or whether it was an innocent error of Senator Wallin, Senator Brazeau, and Senator Duffy, who are all Conservative senators, acknowledging that Senator Harper, who is a Liberal senator, also had these questions being raised. Only Mike Duffy got somebody to actually give him the money to pay off the expenses. So the question I'm asking is, why would that have happened? Other journalists on television today have suggested that this was to buy Duffy's silence. Well, what on earth, what is it that he is being paid off to keep silent? These are at this point questions that I think Canadians have a right to have answered, and I don't think they're going to be answered in the House of Commons without a full investigation that includes being able to ask Nigel Wright under oath, why did you write that check? And did the Prime Minister ask you to write it? Which is a very different question than did the Prime Minister know you decided to write that check?
So what needs to happen from here? Is it an investigation?
I think so. I don't think that we're going to get to the bottom of this without an investigation that deals with the questions, and there are many of them, about what was the effort here at cover-up. There's been a suggestion that Mike Duffy was tipped off by other Conservatives, that his expense accounts were being flagged. There's a suggestion that this check that was written on the account of Nigel Wright was just a personal favor. I don't think that's going to pass the sniff test. I think we're going to really need to have answers under oath so that we get to the bottom of who was directing whom to help try to clean up the expense mess that was, in many ways a smaller offense than the cover-up that seems to be following it.
Well, no doubt Canadians are left with a lot of questions. Elizabeth May, thank you for taking the time to speak with us. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Christine.